So people often see disability as something negative. But let me tell you some of the perks of being in a wheelchair. Well, first, my shoes always look brand new. No matter where I go, I always have a seat. If I strongly disagree with someone, well, I could run them over. Also, I got to exceed expectations because the truth is, society sets the bar very low for people with disabilities. And I don't blame individuals. Before the chair, I never met anyone with a disability. I looked away, I didn't know how to act. Today, my mission is to change the narrative around disability and to share what I've learned. Life inevitable crises can be turned into opportunities, especially if we are of service to others. I will show you tonight how you can turn any shit life throws at you into something positive. In May 2001, one day I felt unwell. A week later, I went to hospital, and in 48 hours, my body totally paralyzed. Started with pins and needles in my legs, then my arms, then nothing. I just could move my head. I was dying ICU. The doctors tried everything. They prepared my family for the worst. Somehow I survived, but it took ages until I got a diagnosis. Transverse myelitis caused by lupus. Transverse myelitis incidence is 1.34 in a million, but caused by lupus, even rarer. I'm clearly very special. After 37 days, I went back home, and I remember my first reaction was just to burst into tears. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could change my reality. I was 19 years old, I was in a wheelchair, and I couldn't feel or move 3/4 of my body. Back home, I needed 24/7 care. I have a big family. So my mom, my siblings, my friends, they were all on my roster. But we were on the brink of bankruptcy. Some days there wasn't even money for food. But crisis means opportunity, and hard times show us the true generosity of other human beings. And thanks to fundraising events, my extended family, my friends, and even strangers, they paid for my treatment for 3 years. Crisis reveals people, and crisis reveals possibility. Everyone goes through hard times in life. Some of us have visible scars. You see me, you see mine. But many of you here have what I call invisible scars. Loss, trauma, diagnosis, heartbreak. Professor Ronald Kessler did a research that shows that about 70% of people will experience at least one major traumatic event in their lifetime. Adversity is universal, but growth, that depends on what you do next. When hard time knocks at your door, don't ask, why me? Instead ask, what can I learn from this? So the physical limitation became my classroom. It forced me to slow down and to look inward and to find the rhino inside me. Yes, a rhino. Big, strong, angry, unstoppable rhino. A rhino with tough skin. When I have a challenge, I lower my head, I aim my horn, and I charge forward. Bring it. And with that rhino mindset, I've learned to set goals, and I've learned about the power of visualization. And I've done physiotherapy day and night, and I remember this finger here moved first, just a tiny little bit. And from this hand was this finger. Quite handy, that one. But I had to relearn how to do everything, how to hold a pen, how to write, how to type, how to brush my teeth, pick my nose, how to comb my hair. Clearly still learning that one. But I had to visualize the movement, and slowly my brain will fire up those pathways. Truly believing that I would achieve the biggest challenge of my life, I decided that I would achieve anything I dream of. So I created a TV show. My book was published in 2010. I was winning awards. I even dabbled as a model. Everything was possible. But after the book, I received an email. It was from a mother of a 9-year-old girl named Bruna. Bruna was also in a wheelchair, and her mother wanted to arrange a meeting so Bruna would meet a successful woman in a wheelchair to be her role model, and that changed everything. I realized walking again wasn't that important, and I could use all that energy, focus, passion, and drive to something else, something bigger than me. That was when my crisis became a way to serve others. My wheelchair didn't limit me. It became a platform. Then in 2012, I came to Aotearoa, New Zealand to visit my siblings on holiday. As a tourist, I love it. I remember pushing my chair in Auckland downtown. The pathways had no holes. In Brazil, the sidewalks were like a war zone. And I thought, this is a country where I can belong. So I stayed, got a job in the disability sector. Life was good. Then in 2014, I applied for residency. That was when I discovered the immigration policy called Acceptable Standard of Health. If you have any disability and some chronic health conditions, lucky me, I had 2 in the list, your visa will likely be declined. My visa was denied. I appealed. It was denied again. At some point, I was planning to chain myself to the Sky Tower and call the international media. But after 7 years hearing, you are a burden, I started to believe it. And if I'm a burden to this country, then I'm a burden to my family and my friends, so I shouldn't be here. At some point, I was contemplating suicide, and the only thing that kept me alive was my mother's unconditional love. I went back to therapy, got back on my wheels, and eventually I made a decision. I overstayed my visa, I became unlawful, and then I appealed against deportation on humanitarian grounds. Couldn't work. I had to live on my savings and then borrow some. Thanks, brother. And there was no time frame, no guarantee of success, just a strong belief that I needed to take a stand. So I turned my crisis into action. I launched a petition, I shared my story publicly, and I started the Let Her Stay campaign. Massive crisis, lots of opportunities to learn. I've learned that a system that discriminates can take away from you everything you need and you love. I lost my job. I was on the brink of being separated from my family. But there was one thing that the system couldn't take away, and that's my hope, because that's a power within. I've learned that the biggest challenges in life is to master our minds, because when you do that, you find peace no matter what. I've learned to stay vigilant, and when my mind is spiraling into negativity, I can choose to change the story in my head. And I've learned that what carries us through the unthinkable is human connection, family, friends, love. Then the unthinkable came. My appeal was denied. I was given 3 months to organize my affairs and to leave the country. My last option was ministerial intervention. During this time, a friend sent me a book on yoga philosophy, and I've learned about the principle of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of control and trusting a deeper meaning. To surrender was one of the most profound lessons I learned. Finally, I understood you can't run away from your mission. My case is literal, I can run. But you can't run away from your mission. I traveled to the other side of the world, hoping that I could end the suffering associated with my impairment and the fact that we live in a disabling society. To surrender for me was to accept that I would be treated differently, no matter where I go, and I have a role to amplify the voices of those with disabilities to create equity. And once I understood that, everything started to fall into place. I was in the office, my lawyer rang, and he said, "The minister say yes." And I said, "What?" He said, "The minister say yes." I said, "What?" It was the 3rd time that he said, "The minister has granted you residency." That the information started to sink in, and I thanked him profusely, and then I started to cry, and I said, "I have to tell my family." And then at night when I told them, honestly, we are Brazilians, it felt like we had won the World Soccer Cup, it was just like, ah! Anyway, my immigration crisis sparked a movement. I addressed the United Nations, and they came with recommendations to change the policy. The government said, yeah, nah, but we're not giving up. And I know we will get there because I'm a pain in the ass, and progress is the only way forward. But I'm driven by something deeper, changing the narrative around disability. As humans, we assign meaning to everything. At some point along the way, we decided that disability was something to fear or fix. If that meaning was created, we cannot make it. Disability is part of the human experience. Some are born with it, others acquire it. It's life. And when families who initially grieve a newborn with a disability later reframe it as a blessing, it shows us perspective means power. Let me ask you something. What if your biggest challenge becomes someone else's survival guide? You just have to ask, how can my pain serve? Psychologist Richard Tedeschi, who coined the term post-traumatic growth, says that service is one of the most powerful ways to transform pain into purpose. It's the bridge between suffering and strength. When you help others, you just don't heal yourself. You also transform your pain into power. How can your pain serve? Maybe it's volunteering, speaking up, help someone navigate the road that you already travel, or simply sharing your story so someone else will feel less alone. You might not choose your obstacles, but you can choose what they become. Imagine a future where you choose to be a rhino, fierce, focused, fearless. First, you have to believe. Believe, believe, believe change is possible. Because it was that belief that took me from a hospital bed to a TV show, to a book, to a life that is incredible. Then you need to engage others because we don't do anything alone. It was my family, my friends, and even strangers who carry me when I couldn't carry myself. Accept whatever life throws at you with the certainty you're going to bounce forward with resilience and hope. Vividly imagine the outcome that you wish. That is how I landed in the TEDx today. And finally, remember, crisis always means opportunity. And I think once you get the hang of it, you kind of, come on, bring the challenges, because you know you're going to turn them into something positive. I leave you today with a question. Are you ready to transform your crisis into an opportunity to serve? I promise you it will lead to an incredibly fulfilling and meaningful life. Thank you.